Hey folks, welcome to this YouTube special edition of Bad GM's Campaign Build Along. I am, as always, the Bad GM Wayne Davis, and we're going to cover something I discussed a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, and that's what to do if your group decides to go bad. I mean, we're writing an entire campaign with the idea being that they're going to be the good guys, but I know there are some groups out there that relish the idea of being the bad guys. So, if your group decides that rather than destroy Paladin Zane's group, they want to join them, what do? All right, so we need to look back at some of the action the group's been taking over the course of the campaign leading up to that. I mean, joining forces with Zane probably shouldn't be a big surprise when they decide to do it. If it is, then that means they've made some sudden change of character, and that means you might need to pause the game and have a discussion with them. That doesn't mean they need to not make that choice. It just means that you need to talk to them to figure out what their motivations are. I mean, if they've been the type of group that's been rescuing kittens from trees and helping little old ladies cross the street, and suddenly they want to destroy paramilitary groups working for the common good, then something has changed and it would be a good idea to try to understand why. But if the group's been leaning that way the entire time, that makes sense. For my group, it wouldn't have exactly surprised me if they'd gone that way. They'd sort of been leaning that way from the start. I mean, sure, they took out mostly bad guys, but that's really because I'd been playing them really bad. If I'd been playing them in a more morally gray way, that might have changed the way they perceived them and therefore changed the way they handled things. But the turning point was definitely when Victor was taken. At that point, all bets were off and they were going with the good guys. But this isn't about my group. It's about yours. So let's figure out what to do if your group decides it wants to join Zane and her group. First things first, it's going to require a lot of reworking of the campaign on your part. But by this point in the campaign, you should be more than ready to handle that, especially if you've been doing this for 2 seasons now. But like all things, there's a start point. The group is going to have to rescue Zane and her team, and they're going to have to somehow convince Zane that they're the bad guys. Now, it can't be obvious because they're going to come off as posers or whatever term the kids are using these days, and that is not going to impress her. And they're going to have to act fast because if they don't, things are going to progress much like we wrote them, and instead of being able to act with Zane, they're going to find themselves on the outside trying to work their way in. Now, Mackenzie Cook would be a really good way to gain Zane's trust. The interaction between Zane and Cook needs to take place at some point, and the tension between the two would be a great way for the group to realize they've gotten in. If the group either brings Cook to Zane for her to deal with, or takes Cook out and brings her body to Zane as proof, Zane will get the idea that these are people she can work with. But let's be real, she's not going to immediately trust them. She'll give them another mission, and that's going to be to take out Victor, or whomever they're using as their mentor. That's where you're going to have to do some reworking of the scenario. Stealth would probably be the best way to handle it, especially since Victor still would have no reason to not trust the group. But the thing to remember is that once they take him out, they have to provide proof to Zane and her team. And once they take him out, they still have to get out of Diamond Pass or wherever it is their mentor is located. Now, from there, things are going to work a lot like we've written them up, though instead of taking out Garson Tactical, Jessica Denman, and the Synths, the group are going to be supporting them. That means you got to create some opposition for them. Again, that's going to be on you. Mr. Lee and his team would be a good group to use, as would Melanie Zombrowski and her team. I mean, heck, you could pull up the Children of Adam from Jefferson County to use if you wanted to. Or you can create a group or two of your own and pull them into the fray. And don't forget, at some point, Elder Sandvar and her batch of the Brotherhood of Steel have to make an appearance so they can be taken out and Zane's group can prevail. Also, the tone gets way darker under this scenario, since the idea is to rule with an iron fist. Think Empire rather than Rebellion, Darth Vader rather than Luke Skywalker. So, I realize that this is a rather short piece, but it was always intended to be. The whole idea was to give you some building blocks to work with for your group rather than rewriting the entire campaign. If your group decided to turn to the dark side, good luck, and let me know how it all worked out with your game. There's more YouTube stuff coming, so make sure you click on the subscribe button and hit the bell for alerts when we drop new stuff. Also, check out the info box to see where you can follow us for all the news coming from Bad GM Productions. And as always, new episodes of the podcast drop every Friday wherever you get your podcasts, and they drop the following Friday right here on the YouTube feed. Until next time, I'm the Bad GM Wayne Davis, and I'll see you at the game table.